some of our content here at Lionsgate. I mean, I am lucky because I have the privilege of working on IP like The Hunger Games. If you don't have a diverse team that feels valued and respected, then the value with which you're going to be able to create is not going to be nearly as good.
It's such a pivotal time that we need to have the respect for the consumer and do what has made this industry and these experiences so phenomenal.
Welcome to Experience Imagination and the first episode of our new season. I'm your host, Audrey DeLong. I have a partner and an interviewee for this episode, our Executive Vice President of Marketing and Branding, Toni Caracciolo, who was just recently honored as one of 25 women who mean business by the Orlando Business Journal. Hi, Toni.
Hey, Audrey. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so thrilled to be on our award-winning Experience Imagination. This is a thrill for me.
We've had you before, but this is a little different. So do you want to talk about that award before we move on?
Oh my gosh, I'm so humbled to be recognized. You know, if anything else, I mean, for more, it's community impact and kind of giving back, you know, to what we've been able to do as a leader. But I'm so humbled amongst these other incredible women. Mm-hmm. If nothing else, you know what, inspiring future women leaders of tomorrow.
Yeah, very good. Let's get to today's topic. As some of you listeners might be aware, March is Women's History Month. Toni and I certainly know that, and we have a fun exercise for it.
Can't wait.
But first, let me tell everyone about the topic for today's episode. It's women in leadership roles in themed entertainment. Our special guest is Jenefer Brown, Executive Vice President and Head of Global Products and Experiences at Lionsgate. Falcons worked with Jenefer when we brought the Hunger Games film franchise to reality for the Lionsgate zone at the theme park MOTIONGATE Dubai. She has been with Lionsgate for nearly 11 years, and before that, she was with ThinkWell Group. So, Toni, what are you most interested in hearing from Jen about?
Oh my gosh, what she's been up to at Lionsgate. And also, I'm a big fan, so this is going to be so fun. And how she's expanding the reach of Lionsgate properties. I mean, so much news is coming out. Mm-hmm. I want to hear also her take on the current state of location-based entertainment.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And I'm going to ask her about the importance of having female voices in the room and what her journey has been like as she's climbed the ranks, among other things. By the way, Toni, I want you to answer some of these questions, too. All right, so Toni, do you want to give our listeners a little bit of an idea about your own work history?
So from an intern in public relations at SeaWorld Orlando, coming right out of college, I started a career journey working in marketing and sales at the park, was able to move up to the corporate level a couple times, you know, had the privilege of really working with all the brands, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens, Aquatica, and my favorite, I have to just say it, Discovery Cove, just a special brand to me and on what that incredible all-inclusive resort is still able to do today. And actually protecting our fragile seas and marine life will always mean a lot to me. I know that's important to you too, Audrey.
Yeah.
Then I had the privilege of joining the Visit Orlando team, which was amazing to be able to learn about destination marketing and as the VP of global marketing, but working with all the members, but Disney and Universal and you know, with those just exceptional marketing teams and learning more about our destination, you know, our own backyard here in Orlando. There's so many things to do. Museums and parks. I mean, you know, get out in nature. That's not something we talk about a lot in Orlando as the theme park capital of the world. And, you know, I wasn't necessarily looking for another experience, but I learned about Falcons and I was contacted about this role of, I think, the first EVP of marketing and branding, and was looking at the work that was done and where Falcons is going into the future. And I just was like, absolutely. I mean, I have to say, you know, even just from my first interviews with Cecil, with Simon Phillips, with Scott Demeraux, it felt like I was coming home. It kind of felt like everything I had done in my career had led me up to this moment.
Well, before we move on to our conversation with Jen Brown, I asked Toni to research a woman in entertainment history and give me some clues so I can guess who it is, and then I did the same. So would you mind if I go first? You have to guess who I'm talking about?
Okay.
How do you think you're going to do?
I think women in history, I think I'll do pretty well.
Okay. All right. So let me give you the first clue. She is one of the most beloved comedians of all time with one of the longest enduring legacies.
Oh my gosh. Like, it's got to be Lucille Ball.
It is
because
Lucille
I'm like
Ball.
a huge fan. What an iconic woman who broke through barriers
Yeah.
of that time. Just so fascinating. That's perfect.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Perfect,
Well,
perfect one to chew a hog. Wow, how do I top that?
Well, I mean, I want to read a couple facts about Lucy because
Yes,
it's kind of
you
interesting
should.
for our listeners. Desilu Productions, which was a company that Lucy started with her husband, Desi Arnaz, transformed the way studios created and produced movies and television shows. Many complex techniques in television productions, like filming in front of a live studio audience and using 3 cameras, started with them.
Wow.
And this is a good one. Although network executives refuse the expense of shooting a television series on high-quality film. Can you imagine that? Arnaz and Ball insisted and picked up the tab for the extra expense under the condition that they would retain ownership of the films. So that negotiation is widely considered to be one of the smartest business decisions in the history of American entertainment, as Desilu Studios went on to invent the concept of the rerun and used profits from syndication to fund the studio's growth.
Brilliant. Completely
I know,
brilliant.
right? All right, so you know what? I think I'm ready for your
Okay.
hints. I don't know who it is.
Okay, so this amazing woman created Imagination Library, sending more than 1 million books per month to children around the world, inspiring them to dream more, learn more, care more, and be more. Okay, clue number 2.
Yeah.
This amazing woman owns a theme park in the U.S. town of Pigeon Forge.
Okay, is it Dolly Parton?
Oh, it's got to be Dolly Parton. I was like, if you don't get this one. And, another tidbit, if you didn't get it there, which I knew you were going to, she wrote the music and lyrics for the musical 9 to 5 and the song from the 1980 movie of the same name.
Right, yeah. Good movie.
Oh, and
Highly recommend.
I mean, talk about a country music star, musician who also, I mean, very similar to Lucille Ball. It's interesting how we both kind of gravitated towards similar type women, but leaders in their own right, leaders in the entertainment, you know, but doing things and breaking glass ceiling, as they say, and what had never been done before.
Yeah.
I mean, brilliant businesswoman.
Yeah, very true. Okay, listeners, one final note before we move to our conversation with Jenefer Brown from Lionsgate. We wanted to try something new for this season 8 kickoff. A lightning round. That is a term I'm stealing from other podcasts, by the way. But later, Toni's going to interview me. She's going to ask me some questions. They're going to be quick. I honestly don't know what she's going to ask me. So you're going to want to stick around for the end of this episode to find out how that went. And we'll be right back with Jen and more Toni. Hi, Jen.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Hey, Jen, it's so great to meet you.
Oh, nice to meet you too, Toni.
We're excited to have you. Before we get into the questions, can you just give our listeners a little bit of background about your work history? How did you get started in themed entertainment?
I would say that it was probably accidental and purposeful at the same time. So I had moved to Los Angeles and was screenwriting. I really have always loved writing and being a storyteller, and became a little disenchanted with sort of working in TV and film. And a friend of mine said, have you ever thought about working on, theme park attractions and rides? And I said, I've never thought about that. Like, tell me more. And that was really like the first insight I had into this world, in learning that, every attraction has a script. There's a narrative. There's a guest experience that's thought through, and all those elements have to come together. And it just really excited me. So it was a total accident that I fell into the world, but then really purposeful in the sense that once I discovered it, I really well researched it and kind of figured out who the players were in the space, what companies were doing what. And that really kind of led me down a path to start a career.
What was the first company you worked for in themed entertainment?
I had done a bunch of research and I came across Thinkwell, which is now part of Tate. And I was really intrigued by the work that they were doing, because they worked with a lot of different IP holders and brands and cultural institutions. And they did live entertainment and museum work and a lot of theme park work. And so I reached out cold. I didn't know anyone there. I sent my resume over and somehow got a call and went in for an interview. And literally on my ride home, they called me back and said, we think you'd be a fit here. We don't know exactly like in what role, but just the energy and kind of the connection that we had. And it was one of those things where I I like knew it was the right thing. It was not an industry I was aware of. Like I said before, it wasn't something that I had explored until I fell into it. But then the minute that I stepped inside, it's like I never looked back.
That's great. That's like Providence.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you started at Thinkwell, were there any women in leadership roles?
There were a few. I mean, the principals of the company were all male, but there were a few women who were leading specific areas of the company. So Kelly Reiner, who was overseeing business development, Cynthia Sharp, who was leading cultural attractions, Mary Clough, I think, who oversaw operations and HR. There were a few, but, predominantly at that time, I think, it felt very male heavy, for sure.
Yeah. Well, hopefully things have changed. I think we're seeing some improvements, but
Yeah.
I did want to ask Toni a question here, and it's about female leaders in the industry. Did you have any role models, or did anybody serve as a mentor early in your career?
Yes, there's someone who comes to mind immediately. Her name is Linda Smith. She's probably known in the industry from her company Smith Inc., but she was the VP of corporate branding when I was in St. Louis for Bush Entertainment Corporation early in my career, first ever brand manager of the company. And, she was just absolutely so brilliant. That really had an impact on me. And to this day, I think of my branding and marketing expertise, and I think, what would Linda do? And really thank her for that. But I got to tell you, I mean, she was tough. But, from that, she taught me how to be prepared and how to be smart. And it's never left me. And even actually when I came to Falcons, I reached out to her because I was looking at some past presentations and some brand work that was done and came across Falcons Creative Group branding workshop. Where we now say today, we say, Falcons Creative Group is simply masterful. Like just such the perfect phrase to use for what Falcons does every single day. And came across, Linda, that's interesting. I was like, of course. They called on the best. So yes, absolutely had the privilege. But I do remember, before I'd walk in her room, work on any campaign, I paused and I made sure I was completely buttoned up.
Wow.
And it was, to this day, it's out of respect for her. And really, it stayed with me because I'll do that every single meeting because it's out of respect for anyone in the room.
Yeah, well, that's well said. Jen, what about you? Did you have any mentors?
Yeah, I think, early on in my career, definitely Kelly Reiner, who was heading business development for Thinkwell at the time. And I think just getting my start in the industry, I can remember going to the TEA Summit and seeing her and Roberta Perry just leading a room full of people and being really impressed by the way that they captivated the room, how clear their communication was. They were both great public speakers. And I think at a very kind of early age in this industry, I learned sort of the importance of being able to communicate well and, excel in public speaking and really build relationships. I watched kind of some of the women, and there weren't that many, truthfully, in a lot of these rooms. And a lot of the rooms that they were leading were mostly men kind of observing and participating. And I thought this industry, a lot of the work that gets done is through your relationships that you build, and then also the reputation that you build for yourself. But I was really grateful to have a few strong female leaders to look to.
I do want to ask you about your current job. So basically, we'll get to what you do in your current position as an executive, but why do you think you were able to climb those executive ranks? What is it about your personality, your traits?
I think I worked really hard. I was the first person in and often the person turning off all the lights in the building. I really wanted to understand every facet of the work that we do. And so I touched lots of different areas. I used to sit there, Terry Palmer, who's an incredible master planner. I used to sit with him, when I was learning the business, and I would ask a lot of questions about master planning and sort of help put the pieces together. I wasn't going to be a master planner, but I really wanted to understand that aspect of a project because it's incredibly important and sort of the thought process behind it, so that in a room, if those questions came up, I had an aptitude to understand what was being asked and also an ability to kind of think about how maybe to answer them, right? Even though it wasn't my predominant area of expertise. And I think out of that came a good understanding of what my strengths are and maybe the areas that I need support in. And so as I looked to kind of build teams over time, really kind of building teams, with colleagues who were really strong in other areas. And so that overall, our team didn't have a weakest link. Right? We together really were successful. I always say, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. And I think being a really good judge of character and skill is super important. If we don't understand it, we have to have people surrounding us who do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just not going to be successful.
And it's fun stuff to do. It's not like you're asking somebody to go into a coal mine. You're asking them to enjoy themed entertainment. So I can't think of too many things better than that. But that does kind of lead into my next question, because I was going to ask this, what advice you would give to young professionals. And I could talk to Toni about this all day, but when I see young professionals starting at Falcons, when I say young, like they're in their 20s, maybe they don't even have job experience before this, maybe they came out of college. It's asking the right questions and not being afraid, first of all, of the question you ask, like, oh, I don't want to sound stupid, but don't ever think that. And, second of all, don't be afraid of the answer too. So you just have to be really inquisitive, I think. What other tips would you give somebody who's young?
I love everything you just said. And that's definitely part of when I speak to interns here at the studio, or do panels, for people who are just getting started with their career. Number one is you've got to bet on yourself. You really have to believe in yourself. And if you know what you want, you have to value that you can go out and achieve it. And you can't, to your point, be afraid not only to ask questions, but to take risks. And that can be scary. And, I remember early on in my career, I think it may have been Mary Clough, actually, who said to me, Jen, you are fearless. You are not afraid to ask for what you want. And mind you, sometimes I ask and I get, a very loud no or a door closed, but the reality is I would much rather get the no than to not know. Like that uncertainty is not a place that I want to live in. And so when I look back, every risk I've ever taken, every time I bet on myself or what I believed in, it's always worked out. It's always paid off. It may have been bumpy at the time, but it's always led to something better. And I think every single one of those instances has helped get me to where I am today.
Yeah.
I wanted to build on something that you said, Jen, made me think about, coming up through my marketing career. And it absolutely, I would not have the confidence today to be the marketer executive that I am today if I had not done and sought out every single position that there possibly is in marketing and sales. I've done it all, partnerships, special events, public relations. And sometimes through that, it was a lateral move in order to learn that next skill. Sometimes I think when you're younger, you put blinders on, like, this is my job, this is the job I'm here to do, and I am just going to do the best job I can every single day. What I think I would tell a young person today is, that's great that you're observing and you're getting the job done from that 9 to 5, but this is not a 9 to 5 world. It's not a 9 to 5 industry. That you need to seek out and kind of, not be afraid, but also do what's not comfortable and ask the questions. So, it's always is that you've got to absolutely reach out and learn those different areas of the company that you may not understand, because at the end of the day, that's how you become an executive and that's how you move up, because you are a key stakeholder and you may not have all the answers, but anyone in that room knows that you're going to come back and find the answers.
Yeah. I think a common denominator with this group here, Jen, Toni, and me, is we have a writing background, and Toni and I have a journalism background. So we asked a lot of questions. Probably why I have my podcast host position is I like asking questions. And it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people.
Well, and I think even building on that, it is also part of how you build relationships with people.
Exactly.
I mean, we just opened a project this past week. And, we needed support on something essentially in the middle of the night. We needed some programming support. And if our team did not have the relationships to literally get someone there at midnight, we wouldn't have been ready in the morning. And so, I always say, and I think for young people kind of coming up, go to as many of the events that you can go to. I think there are a lot of great, young professional opportunities for students, for people who are just starting out. meet people, talk to people. Like it is the one time in your life, I think, where everyone's sort of willing to hear you out usually. And so you can get into rooms that maybe get harder to get in later in life. But I think the earlier that you can start building relationships, both with people who are already in the space, but also people who are just like you, because at some point you're going to be the face of the industry together, and you start building those relationships really early. And I think that's another important kind of piece of advice that I give people.
So important to be somebody who others want to work with. Toni, you give tips to young people through your mentorship. First of all, I know you're a mentor. Can you talk to our listeners about why you got into that and what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel it's just so important, and Jen alludes to this as well. Just to give back. Yes, it's been a lot of hard work and perseverance, but at the same time, I mentor MBA students that are in the same program that I was, through UCF here in Orlando, and it's the career advice, but those moments of those pivots that you make in your career, do I go this way? Do I go that way? I think to have someone who, in a sense, has been there, and maybe someone who's not a professor or a family or a friend, who can kind of be impartial, but at the same time has the business focus in maybe advice that may be hard to hear. And I think that's some of the hardest mentoring I think that I've done, and where I think maybe I'm sought out, because I'm kind of the one that will tell you maybe what no one else will. But a lot of students have thanked me for that, because they said, thank you for setting me on that path, because I did not see that in myself. So I think it's a matter of mentoring is you've got to care enough. It's not only about taking the time, but it's about sometimes having those hard conversations.
Okay. I have a question about diversity. It's a topic that we hear a lot. Why is it important to implement practices that help ensure a diverse workplace? Jen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, the work that we do has to be reflective of the audiences that we serve. I mean, that is number one. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have a diverse team that feels valued and respected, then the value with which you're going to be able to create is not going to be nearly as good. And so I think I strongly feel, and I think fortunately I have a really diverse team here at the studio, but our projects are so much more enriched by, the contributions that are made by people with different backgrounds and different life experiences. And so I don't know how we can do our jobs, quite frankly, if we aren't reflecting, again, the audiences that we serve. And it's important as part of our work to really question and be challenging the things that we're trying to push forward. And I think having a diverse workforce is imperative to being able to make sure we're asking all the right questions and looking at something from all the angles. So I can't imagine how we could successfully do our job without that.
Yeah. Toni.
Well, I was just thinking about here at Falcons, and and the team members that we have, our audiences are diverse audiences. They're customers from really global, all over the world. But I don't think there's an IP that is out there that we could not walk down the hall literally and find someone on our creative team and master planning teams, media teams that does not know that IP, loves that IP, and has some connection to it. It is just so broad and so diverse. But I love nothing more when I walk by a conference room and I hear, this lively sounds and maybe debate, laughter, challenging coming out of there. But if you think about it, that's the same thing a family does when they go through. Do you want to go to that attraction or that attraction? I mean, it's, we kind of have to embody those customers and exactly what they're looking for. And I think, we're examples, I think, of exactly, companies that are doing that.
Mm-hmm. At EA, when I was there, it was like 90-10 male. And I could tell, maybe hopefully they thought it was beneficial to bring a female onto the design team, but I was the only producer out of 50 producer designers, the only female in that group. And I brought a different perspective, not only because I'm female, but because I wasn't really a gamer before I started there. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's just my little story. Let's talk about Lionsgate, Jen.
Sure.
Let's talk about what you're doing at Lionsgate. Tell us, first of all, what's the link between the Twilight Saga and Roblox?
We recently launched a new initiative in Roblox. It's called Movie Store. And the first content that we incorporated is Twilight. We've just seen such an immense fan response to Twilight. I know we're over a decade kind of removed from the film starting, but it's been fascinating to see how a younger audience has just embraced Twilight. And then you have kind of the audience that grew up with it, some of whom have kids now and are introducing their kids to Twilight. And so we wanted to test some things in Roblox to really engage with fans in different ways. And so Movie Store allows fans to buy movies through Roblox, but you don't just buy the movie. It comes with a really special item. And so, we created Bella's truck, for example, a recreation of that. And you can use it inside of a game in Roblox. And we created some really custom items that have sort of like special features that can only unlock in Roblox. So you can accessorize and dress your avatar much like you would in the real world if you wanted to put on, a Team Edward or Team Jacob t-shirt, but now you can do it in Roblox. But for the first time, you can actually,
cool. I'm sorry.
you can buy the movie, you can, get an exclusive item that actually does something in Roblox, and then you can, wear your Twilight t-shirt while you're doing it all. And it was really cool because we dropped a Twilight Lego set recently, and listening to a fan say like that they were having the best day ever because they were building their Twilight Lego set, watching the Twilight movie, and also on Roblox, gearing up with all the accessories. So it's like watching a movie on Roblox, building Lego set, and then also dressed in their avatar form in their favorite film. And it was sort of like we just achieved something really special, and that is always the goal.
The epitome of IP. I mean,
expansion,
expansion. Oh my gosh, that is
For
so.
sure.
You're making me think of my daughters. Going through that and watching it with my daughters, and now it's a connection to us. That's literally my as I'm thinking, it's just you bring kind of that emotion into it of a moment and an entertainment experience that had a great thought of something that you want to share.
Is it old enough to be nostalgic, the Twilight Saga? Yeah, right?
I mean, for some people it is. And then for other people, they're just finding it and kind of falling in love with it. And we have a Twilight TV series coming to Netflix. So I think there's going to be a whole new generation also.
Jen, you can't see our content producer, Sky, is off camera and or is on the side. She is absolutely having a Twilight memory. She's like, I want all of it. I want all of it.
Sky's a mega fan.
Yes.
I could tell.
I love it.
One of the other elements that you're dealing with at Lionsgate, part of your job, if I'm not mistaken, is location-based entertainment. So you have your finger on the pulse of that whole segment. Tell us how that's going. What is your take on the current state of that part of the industry?
I think it's a really interesting time. For us, like we just opened the John Wick experience in Las Vegas, like just opened it, which is a standalone attraction that's part walkthrough, part, live entertainment, has interactive elements. It's almost hard to describe what it is. We really have to think long and hard when we put a description together. And I think that that's reflective of maybe a lot of what's been happening in the industry. There are a lot of boundaries being pushed or sort of new things that are developing, which I think are really interesting. It's almost hard to describe. I mean, at one point, people used to think themed entertainment, theme park, right? And now it's almost impossible to kind of limit what types of things fall under the themed entertainment bucket. And so I think it's really exciting that we've expanded and that we're servicing and engaging with fans in like so many and audiences in so many different ways. I think the only challenge I see with that, and we've seen it in a few instances, is just we have to be really cautious. I think there have been some examples in recent time of people kind of jumping on this train of, everybody's into experiential. And I worry sometimes when things damage the industry that the really great projects and work that are happening, they face some consequences from that too. And so I always say I love, a world-class theme park, but it's harder and harder to build those these days, both from an expense and time standpoint, but also, there are only so many cities in the world or regions in the world that can kind of sustain that level of attraction. And so these other types of experiences, I think, are really vital to the growth of the industry.
Yeah, that is a good point. Toni, what is your take?
It is critical. That's such a key point that you made, Jen, is it's such a pivotal time that we need to have the respect for the consumer to be the storytellers and be the innovators and do what has made this industry and these experiences so phenomenal. It's not just about the IP. And I think that's such a key point. You can have a great IP, and someone may flock to that. But if that experience doesn't deliver, then it really is, well, I'm going to kind of think differently about this the next time. So that I think where the industry is going is so exciting. But this is, I think, a moment in time where we just really need to get it right.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, let's just circle back to the topic here for our final question. How does having female voices in the room help entertainment companies meet the demands of savvy audiences who are enjoying more and more branded online experiences as well as in-person experiences?
Women are very close to 50%, right, of the world population. And so I don't know how anyone could be thinking you can disregard that as pivotal to the creation of anything. But we're also often the lead purchaser of tickets or entertainment decision maker in a household. And so from a spending power perspective, it's also really important. Some of our content here at Lionsgate, I am lucky because I have the privilege of working on IP like The Hunger Games, which has, Katniss Everdeen, one of, that sort of strong female lead character. And a lot of our film series, are based off of books that have strong female content. But the wonderful thing we've seen with all of this content is how we've turned it into 4-quadrant, meaning when we make the movie, women by far, I think are super fans and sort of react to the content in really strong ways, which I love to see and watch. But who comes to see the movies and who would consider themselves fans, it really is 50-50 female male. And I think it's just, we have like real evidence that female driven content can cross over and become just as important, impactful, and create that fandom on the male population as it does on the female population. So I love kind of pointing to some of the content we have here in-house and sort of educating people about the impact that it can have.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jen. This has been really nice, and congratulations on all of your success with Lionsgate and then some.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting. It's been great.
And Toni, thanks to you again.
Thank you. I think, as a lot of this conversation was, Jen and I, this is the first time that we've actually, kind of met face to face. And I was like, Jen, we're going to be friends. I can see this already.
Totally.
I think that's almost a perfect example, as I think we're kind of kindred spirits in some regard.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, here's to many more success stories from all of us. And Jen, we'll probably see you at IAPA this year.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We'll definitely have to grab a drink at IAPA or meet
Absolutely.
up for sure. Yeah.
Sounds good. All right, so I am back with Toni, and like I said up in the intro, we're doing this lightning round for the first time, and you have some questions for me. Just to remind everybody, I don't know what you're going to ask me.
No, you don't. And I should actually let the listeners know that when I was considering joining Falcons, I, of course, listened to all the podcasts. And I got to say, Audrey, that I was just so awestruck to meet you. You're a natural talent at this as a producer. So I'm excited for the listeners to kind of get to know a little bit more about Audrey, like I've been able to do the time I've been here. So let's go behind the scenes.
Thank you.
So Audrey, what do you watch in your free time?
A lot of Conan O'Brien clips. I still watch original episodes of The Simpsons, tennis, and a wide mix of comedy and dramas.
Okay, you worked at EA Sports as a designer-producer for 8 years. What's your favorite game?
Well, I think my favorite title to work on there was probably the first one that I worked on was Madden 05, although I was involved with 14 total titles there. It's hard to pick one, but I got to do a lot of fun things there.
Okay, and favorite sport?
Tennis.
Okay. And what's a nonprofit you support?
Save the Manatees.
Excellent. I know we have that in common. And who's a female leader who's inspired you?
Well, there have been a couple during my career, but I'd have to say the most inspirational is named Yvette Whitaker.
Oh, yes.
And she's here at Falcons. If y'all don't know, She is our Chief Corporate Officer, and I don't know how she has the energy. She's been with the company since day one, even before that, as we learned on our 25th anniversary podcast, and she just makes things run so smoothly here. If we were ever to have a pep rally, I'd pick a vet to lead it.
Absolutely. Such a great answer. Well, that was fun.
It was fun. I like those questions. All right, well, that wraps up this episode about women leaders in themed entertainment. Thanks again to Jenefer Brown from Lionsgate for joining me and Toni. I encourage everyone to learn about some of the trailblazing women who have opened doors for us. We salute them, and we appreciate their contributions.
You know what? So now go out and make your own history.
Yes, definitely do that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next month. Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcon's Creative Group production. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. Be sure to check out falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you have ideas for future episodes or just want to drop us a message, send an email to podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.